Okay, Rabbi Sais, we continue our quest in the Inyan of Shovovim. I want to quote to you a Targum Yonasan ben Uziel and Parshas Vayechi, Perek Memtes, Pasuk Yud Beis, where the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says as follows, probably very common and well-known words. Mayoin hinoin einoi de malka meshicha kechamra zakicha min lachemra giloi irayon v'shadius adam zakai v'shinu nakai min chalba dolamecha chato v'anuso kadein yismukun tavyun. Everybody with me? Okay. So I'll tell you in English exactly what the Yonasan ben Uziel is Targum Yonasan ben Uziel is telling us, and I think it's a tremendous yesod to learn, and we can apply this for our Inyan as this. What the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel is telling us is as follows. How beautiful are the eyes of Melech HaMashiach, like clear wine, because he didn't look at Gilui Arayis. Says with Moshe Shapira Zatzal, what's pshat in this Targum Yonasan ben Uziel? He says the words of the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel tell us the tremendous yesod of a person. I want to deal with that with today's shir, Be'ez Hashem. Is the yesod of a person that looks at Arayis, a person that looks at that which he should not be looking at. We're not talking about just a seeing, we're talking about a staring, a real looking for Hana. Isn't just a meister his staklas. He didn't just look, but rather it's clear in his eyes, as Targum Yonasan ben Uziel is telling us, the eyes of Mashiach are different, because he didn't look at Arayis, which means it actually affects the eye. So that which you do, the Mesilas Yesharim, by the way, calls it the niyuf beinayim. A person can be mezaneh with his eyes. And this is what Moshe Shapiro explains to us, that we have to realize that when a person looks at that which he shouldn't be looking at, alright, I looked, no, what's the big deal? Okay, I'll do tshuva, it'll be alright, and that's true, we'll get to that. Be'ez Hashem, we'll talk about the tshuva chelik of things. But before we get to that, I want to go tonight into a little bit of the scary part of things. And then Mitzvah Hashem will go a little bit uphill next week, Be'ez Hashem. But the first thing a person has to realize is, it affects you. It affects your eyes. Reb Nosson Adler, the Rebbe of Nachsam Sofer, says a tremendous yesod, a very, very scary thing. He brings a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah tells us that when a person is chayla, when a person is really, really sick, Rachmana litzlan, we should never know, but when a person is in hospital, and he's terribly, terribly sick, he's mamish holding by the end, says the Gemara, the Malach HaMoves stands above him. The Malach HaMoves is right on top of him. Says the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, the Malach HaMoves is molei einayim. He's full of eyes. What does that mean? Thousands and thousands of eyes. So the Chassam Sofer brings from his Rebbe of Nosson Adler. You know what it means? That means when a person looks at something you shouldn't be looking at, he creates eyes. And those are the eyes that affect him, that he actually sees B'soif Yom, at the end of his lifetime. He sees those eyes on the Malach HaMoves. And he says, the Chassam Sofer explains, sometimes a person shakes before he dies. He's looking at those eyes, he sees it, it's trembling in front of him. The effect that it has can be an everlasting effect. Of course, tshuva, we'll talk about it. But the first step, we have to realize that it affects us. There's a Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Pei, where the Gemara in Kiddushin tells us that some of the Tanoim used to laugh at people that did Averas. What are these people doing Averas? Come on, be strong. What are they doing Averas? So in Shemayim, there was a kitruk, there was a prosecution. How are they laughing at people that do Averas? Let them see. Let's see how they, go pass the test. So it was found that we're going to test them, and one of the Malachim, dressed up as the most beautiful woman ever to walk planet Earth, came down to the Tanoim, came down to try and test them this way and that way, and they moved and they tried and they did, whatever. They were matzliach. Baskol came out saying they were matzliach. Asks the Ben Ish Chai and the Gemara in Kedushin, I don't understand. What, a malach had to dress up as the most beautiful woman? Just bring a beautiful woman. What do you have to bring a malach for? Dressed up as a woman? Rabbi Yisrael says the Ben Ish Chai, this is sight. Because if they would have looked, and if they would have seen, it would have affected their eyes, if it was real. It wasn't real. So therefore, it was only a test. But if they would have looked, it would have affected them. Rabbi say, when you look, it's not just, no, I looked, no. No. It actually has a tremendous effect on you. Rabbi say, I want to tell you one of the most scariest Rabbeinu Yonas that we know. Rabbeinu Yonah Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos tells us, if a person embarrasses his friend, a person says something to get someone else embarrassed, no portion in the world to come. Can you imagine? It's another shmooze, embarrassing other people. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, and the most incredible but scary yesod. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, we know that on Shabbos, there's such a thing called an Av, and there's a Tolda. Right? The Av Melacha is what they basically did in the Mishkan, and the Tolda is something that resembles that which they did. So you've got the Av, and you've got the Tolda. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, we've got the Gimel Averis Chamuris, Avedizora, Gilai Arayis, Shvichas Damim. Those are the Avos. You got the Av, Avedizora, Gilai Arayis, Shvichas Damim. That's pretty bad. What's the Tolda? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, just like you have on Shabbos an Av and a Tolda, you have here also a Tolda that comes from the Av, which means it's Doime. So he explains, what is it? So he says, for example, the Tolda of Avodah Zarah could be whatever people are worshipping, whether it's money, whether it could be all sorts of things. Shvichas Domim, what's the Tolda? So obviously the Av is killing, but the Tolda is obviously embarrassing somebody because the blood drains from his face, and therefore it's as if you killed him, and that's the Tolda. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, what's the Tolda of Arayis? Gilai Arayis. We're from Yidden. We have shaykhs to this Gilai Arayis. We have shaykhs to this. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, that's the Av. What's the Tolda? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, the Tolda is Hamistakel Oiledabe Yahoreg Va'al Yavo. Paskins Rabbeinu Yonah, that if a person is in a situation where he might look at something and he has the choice to look or kill himself, you kill yourself. That's the halacha that Rabbeinu Yonah paskins. Yahoreg Va'al Yavo, like every other one of the Gimel Aveiros Chamuros. And he brings a Gemara. Sanhedrin Ayin Hey. Unbelievable Gemara, Rabbi say. There was a man that happened to notice upon a girl. He saw a girl, beautiful girl, really beautiful girl. And he fell in love with her. Classic story. Shiva Bacham don't know anything what I'm talking about. But there is such a thing. Yeah, you see a girl, she's got a great insight, her personality is nice, quote unquote, and he fell in love. But the Gemara tells us all this. I'm just art-scrolling the Gemara. He didn't just fall in love. He fell madly in love with her. He was sickly in love with her. Ad gedei kach, that if he wasn't going to be with her, he would die. He went to the doctor. The doctor said to him, if you don't sleep with this woman, you're going to die. You're madly in love. You have to do this. The Gemara tells us this. So he called up his local Orthodox rabbi. He said, Rabbi, I just have a little small question for you. You know, how they call up Erev Shabbos with that little question. That's like this huge thing. So, a small question. Can I be together with this woman? Because otherwise I'm going to die. So, you know, Yoreg Valyava. Kill yourself first. Goes back to the doctor. He says, Doctor, my rabbi doesn't allow it. What do I do now? I'm stuck. So the doctor says, okay, I figured it out. Get her to stand in front of you naked. She should be wearing no clothes. And hopefully that will that will get your tivers over, the temptations over, and you won't die. Okay? At least that's it. Goes back to the rabbi. Rabbi, it's a small little question for you. Can I Yoreg Valyava? Kill yourself. He goes back to the doctor and says, well, what am I meant to do over here? This is a serious illness. What am I meant to do? I'm reading the Gemara. So the doctor says, okay, get her to talk interesting, nice, love things from behind the wall. You're not even going to see her. He goes back to the rabbi and said, this one for sure, right? Yoreg Valyava. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, and again I quote the Lashon. Hamistakel Oledabe Yoreg Va'al Yava. It's a Rabbeinu Yonah Rabbi Sam Pirkei Avos. You have to kill yourself before you go and do any Aveira. Right, according to one sheet of the Gemara, she was a Pnuya, so what's the problem? Okay, said it, if Mr. Sham, stone and water is always sweeter, whatever it may be. I want to continue. There's a Gemara in Yuma Ayin Dalet. Unbelievable. Malay Chazal over here, I say. There's a Gemara in Yuma Ayin Dalet Amud Beis. The Gemara says like this. Quotes the pasuk. Hamalcha mon min bamidbar leman anoischa. I gave you the mon in the midbar in order to afflict you. What do you mean to afflict you? To give us Akash Baruch Hu gave us the mon to eat. We needed the mon to eat. Otherwise, how would we survive? What does it mean to afflict us? What's pshat? So the Gemara tries to explain what it is, and the Gemara says you can't compare someone that has pas b'saloi, has bread in his basket, and someone that has no pas b'saloi. So it was an affliction, because they had no idea when their next meal would be. They had to wait till it came from Shemayim. They didn't have pas b'saloi. They didn't have their bread in their basket. They were waiting for the man. So it was a type of affliction. That's what the Gemara tells us. And then the Gemara goes on to tell us an incredible insight. Ein doime, you cannot compare the fulfillment of a person eating food that you see and that which you don't see. Right? Rashi tells us also this and the same thing in Masechta Shabbos as well, that when you see your food, you enjoy it better. When you don't see it, you don't have the same geschmack. And that was the affliction of the mon, that the Rebbeinu Shem gave us food, but you don't get the same geschmack because you don't see the tzura and the form and whatever it is. Right? Omar Rabbi Yosef, says the Gemara, from here you see that a blind person doesn't get satisfied when he eats. Omar Abaya, a person should only eat during the day when he can see. In those days they didn't have lights. And the Gemara continues with the pasuk. Listen carefully, Rabbi say. Toiv mare einayim mahalach nefesh. Better is the sight of eyes more than the walking of the soul. What does this mean? Listen to Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish tells us again, this is Gemara Yoma Ayin Daled Amud Beis. Omar Reish Lakish. Good is the sight of the eyes looking at a woman more than the Maisa itself. That means, says Reish Lakish, a person gets more hana when he looks than when he does, than the actual Maisa itself. Asks Revolba Zatzal, what does that mean? A person gets more hana by looking than by the actual action itself. What are you talking? How can such a thing be? So Revolba explains, and he talks about how the human brain works. Imagination. Imagination builds up a picture in our eyes, a picture in our brain of what it would be and how it could be. And that imagination fills us completely. And that's what the whole film industry is all about. This is what Hollywood represents. What they do is they show you enough just to get there and then, leave the rest to your imagination. Toiv mare einayim be'isha Yosem megufo shel meister, says Tosfos Yishanim tzorech lezar me'oid mimenu. That's why you got to be so much more careful. You know, you see this the whole time, right? Now, let's just take an example by the Goyim. You have a woman that walks past a building site, right? She walks past a building site. So what do the builders do? What are you looking at? You're looking at her legs. Yeah, she has legs because that's how she walked from one end to the other end. What are you looking at? You're looking at her legs? What can you see already? Oh, but the imagination, right? That's what they say. You've got that little slit over there. What can you see already? You can see not much. But the imagination gets you going. You know how many boys I've asked and got the same answer every single time? What's worse, a bad movie or a bad book? Every single time I hear the same answer. For sure a bad book. Because the imagination. The movie is what it is. Whatever they show you, they show you. Oh, but the book is much worse. Because the imagination builds it up. And this is a Chazal, Rabbi say. Reish Lakish in the Gemara in Yuma tells us this is sorry. Toiv mare einayim be'isha yosim megufa shel ma'aser. Rabbi say, I want to go a little bit. I mentioned a little bit about this last week. What's going on in your mind, b'shas ma'aser? What's going on psychologically in your head when a person's about to type in the letters on the computer or the letters on his keyboard of his phone or whatever it may be? What's happening? Let's go to a person's, analyze a person's head and his thought process of what's happening over there. And the answer is very simple. What's happening is your brain is telling you there's something there. There's something exciting. There's something that's going to satisfy you. There's something that's going to make you feel good. If you just type it in and you just look, you're going to feel so much better. Psychologically, they're trying to offer you something. Your brain's trying to offer you something. The eye is the biggest salesman. He said, look, I promised you something. Rabbi Sai, I've never spoken to a person that's involved in these inyanim that said afterwards, I felt great. I felt wonderful. No such thing. Every single person says the same thing. I feel empty. I feel disgusting. I can't believe I just did that. Everyone says the same thing. It's the metzias. And as we said last time, it goes even worse than that. It's drinking the salty water. And when you drink the salty water when you're thirsty, it quenches you just for a moment, but it makes you more and more thirsty. So the burst, the bubble, wow! The imagination says, don't worry, just look and you'll be satisfied. It doesn't work that way. Because when you finally get there, you realize it's emptiness. It's absolutely nothing. There's nothing to it whatsoever. Rabbi say, how many people in Klal Yisrael, how many Yidden, gave up their lives, gave up their marriages, gave up their children, their family, for a bit of a temptation, for a bit of a Yoni Arayis, for a bit of physicality. That's all it is. They gave up everything. They gave up their life, their wife, their children, their whole family. For what? For one Maisa. That's all it is. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. A person has to realize, especially when a person is married, it's even worse. Because it happens to be that he's married, so he uses his wife because that's the only woman that has available, but really he's comparing her to everything else. So it only gets worse at that stage. We're living in generations that it's very, very hard. People think that tznius when they cover themselves up, when the clothing is as tight as anything, and you're able to see every single little tiny inch of the body, but that's okay because it's tznius, and that's totally not tznius. And that makes it even harder. It makes it even harder because our Gedorim have just gone out the window. Our Gedorim have come out the window completely. Mesechtes derech eretz abaisai. Chachomim oimrim. Kol ha-mestakel be'ikvah shel isha. Goizenov shayu bonim balei mumin. Rabbi say, how many people daven for their children? Even when you're single, you should daven for your children. You should have good children. And when you do have the children, how much koiches, how much effort, how much time, how much energy, how much money do you put into your children to make sure that they come out good? Chazal tell us, Rabbi say, you want the recipe for good children? Watch your eyes. Watch where you look. Watch what you see. It says Rabbeinu Yonah in the Mishnah Obis Perek Aleph Mishnah Hey, Al tar besicha meisha, or boitel medivrei Torah is the end of the Mishnah. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, you know why? You can't have both. It doesn't work to have Torah and be busy with Inyoni Arayis. You have to choose one or the other. And one of them is very, very dangerous. And let's just end this week with one last zach. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave us the most beautiful eyes, the most incredible eyes that we're able to see so much. We're able to see color. We're able to see so much of the Rebbeinu Shalom's beautiful world. What are we using those eyes for? Somebody once walked into a blind center, a center where they deal with blind children. And the manager took him around and explained there are 3 types of blind people in this center. You got a certain type of people that were blind from birth. They never got to see the world, they never got to see anything, they were born blind. The second type of people turn blind during their lifetime. And the third one is children that will eventually turn blind. And he says, wow, take me to the children that will become blind. So it's an incredible thing. He walks in and they're teaching them Braille. They're teaching them how to read so that when they become blind, Rahman al-Itzlan, they're going to know what to do. And he said, he got up and he started to try to give, speech and give chizuk. And one guy got up, one of the children got up, an older child, but he got up and he said, you know what we feel like? We feel like we have a gun pointed to our head with the finger on the trigger. At any moment it's going to be pulled. At any moment we could lose our eyesight. He said when he left that center, the bracha b'keach ivrim that he made in the morning, the Rebbeinu Shalom opens up our eyes and allows us to see and use those beautiful eyes for the right thing, meant a whole different way. Rabbi Sai, as we mentioned from the beginning, from Nasan Aleph, from the Chassam Sofer, from the Ben Ish Chai, all the Marmakomis that we said, when a person looks, it's not just I looked, it has an effect on him. Not only him, has an effect on his marriage, has an effect on his children, as we have spoken about. And Be'ezah Hashem, next week, we're going to try to take a little bit of a different turn to understand some of the claims that people make in this inyan. Shkoyach.